Hey guys, welcome back. A couple of days ago, I ran into a woman at Walmart who works in the photo lab. I've known her for quite a while. She ended up talking to me about a memory that we both had that I came in many years ago and was trying to make a collage poster. And there was a picture of my fiance's grandson when he was in the first grade. He was using a drill to drill the holes for rear mud flaps on my Volvo wagon. And she remembered asking me how old he was, and when I told her, she just really thought it was inappropriate that he was that age and doing that. People have asked me how old a child is, how old must a child be when I ask them to help me or their parents can allow them to help me. And I don't base things off of age, I base them off of probably maturity and supervision. This young man was having a couple of issues, he's 15 now, was having a couple of issues at school and maybe needed a little bit of guidance. So I told them that I would take him to the salvage yard with me. He had just gotten out of kindergarten, so if you can imagine that, he was a tiny little kid. I needed a torque mount for my Volvo 850 wagon, which is a motor mount that goes on top of the motor and it stops the motor from shaking. So I located an 850 with a good torque mount, but the battery was gone, of course. So I lifted this kid up and put him in the battery tray and sat him on the front of the wagon, and I told him that he was going to help me get this torque mount off. I'm pretty sure you're wondering how was a little kid in kindergarten supposed to do that. Well, I broke all of the bolts free and I handed him a ratchet. I showed him how to put it on the nut, and I told him when you hear the clicking sound, that means it's taking the nut off. Now, it took quite a while with me helping him, but he managed to get the torque mount off the car with me. You know, I think back to when I lived in Kansas before I came to Iowa, and I think what allowed me to believe that this kid could help me while he was in kindergarten were my nephews. When the car I talk about, Turbo, had been mine for about 3 years, I decided I was going to paint the brake calipers. And so I had the car at my mom's house and all the wheels off, and my mother was watching my nephews, who at the time were Wyatt was 4 and Aaron was about 6. So I decided I was going to have them help me. So instead of a spray can, I used a brake caliper kit that used a brush. So what I did was I cleaned off all of the brake calipers, but then I gave an air duster can to my little nephew Wyatt, the littler one, and he sprayed off all of the brake calipers, and then I taped them off with his help, and my nephew who was 6, Aaron, painted the brake calipers. And I realized that, you can have kids do things that you might think are things that are geared for older children. The young man that I took to the salvage yard ended up doing many things with my friends and I. He, in the 2nd grade, was using a torch to help us get out a wheel bearing. Now, mind you, all of these things that this child is doing, there are 2 or 3 guys right there watching him and sitting right next to him. He helped with brake jobs. The kid knew how to change oil in the 1st grade. Funny story, it was Mother's Day. His mom and my fiance were in the house, and I needed to change the oil on my fiance's Toyota Camry, and of course he came with me. He knew how to jack up a car safely as I was watching him to make sure he was safe, and I put the jack stands underneath of it because I wouldn't let him do that. But then he and I were under the car, and I broke the drain plug free, and we drained the oil and took off the filter, and then we put the filter on and filled the car back up. Well, he decided he wanted to show his mom and my fiance the work that he did. Now, remind you, he's really, really little, and I had taught him to slowly bring the car down and not just drop it and release the jack. So they come out, and he's all excited, and he wants to show him, and he doesn't think, and he accidentally lowers the car really fast, and it bounced on the front wheels. And I make a little joke that, well, there goes a set of struts I'm gonna have to do. Funny thing is, that Thursday, now remember Mother's Day is on Sunday, so that Thursday my fiance comes home and says that her car's making a really bad knocking noise in the front. So I ended up having to do that work. But Did that stop me from letting kids help me work on a car? Nope, because that's just part of the deal. That's just how it goes. Her granddaughter, I'd say when she was 4 or 5, she was learning how to test a battery in a car. I actually have a really nice picture of her, probably about the age of 4 years old, removing the screws from a gauge cluster that I was trying to fix on the kitchen table. They've all used drills, they've all used different hand tools. I've bought them hand tools for themselves. But since then, they've all been involved with changing oil or helping me put struts in a car or sway bar links. About 6 months ago, my little Kia Soul was having trouble where when you put the car in drive, you would shift. Every single shift would lurch you forward like a shotgun. Turns out that the temperature sensor in the transmission was problematic in a 2012 year Kia. So I had to take the transmission apart. Well, sure enough, I didn't know his mom was going to drop him off, but up comes the kid now, and he's 15 now, so he was probably about 14, and I take the transmission pan off, and we get it all put back together, and one of the bolts breaks. And he knows after doing this with me that you can't have one bolt gone because it'll cause it to leak. So we had to think outside of the box. That's the one thing that I think I teach the kids the most is anybody can read a piece of paper, anybody can see a video on the internet, but it takes the common sense that a lot of kids are lacking to do some of this work. So he and I got a bolt and a nut and was able to fix that situation. And as we were doing it, I asked him what he thought would be a good idea to fix this problem, and he was the one who suggested the bolt and the nut, and I went along with it, and it turns out that it fixed it. So people ask me, what age do I have kids helping me? There are kids out there that are in the 1st and 2nd grade that I've let help do things with my car, but there are some also in the 1st and 2nd grade that I don't, and some of it depends upon how their parents are raising them, because they have to be raised to listen. You think about maturity. What do you mean maturity in the 1st or 2nd grade? They're 1st or 2nd graders. But what you need is a kid who wants to listen, and kids genuinely want to do the right thing. And this kid that's been working with me for so long, when he was in school, kids were talking about what they did during the summer, and they're talking about going to the swimming pool or playing basketball or going to the park, and he's talking about fixing transmission temp sensors and putting struts in cars, and he was talking about that stuff when he was 10 years old. So do I feel like working with these kids is beneficial? It's beneficial for them, and it also makes me feel pretty good being able to pass something on. Well, I hope that this video was entertaining. So as always, this is Uncle Dave.